Most people think intelligence comes from books, school, or high IQ scores. But there's another kind of intelligence, one that is born in silence, survival, and emotional pain. It's the kind of intelligence people develop when life forces them to read moods faster than words, when they learn to sense danger before it arrives, when they become experts at understanding people because misunderstanding people once cost them peace. Psychologists sometimes call this adaptation, but many people know it by a different feeling: exhaustion. If you've ever felt like you notice too much, overthink everything, or understand people in ways they never understand you, this video might explain why. Because sometimes what looks like intelligence is actually trauma wearing a very polished mask. And today, we're talking about 10 signs you may have traumatic intelligence. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may understand yourself in a way you never have before. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt the energy change? Nobody said anything, nothing obvious happened, but somehow your body knew. Maybe you noticed the tension in someone's voice. Maybe you sensed disappointment behind a smile. Maybe you felt unsafe around someone everyone else trusted, and later, you were right. People often call this intuition, but for many, it isn't intuition, it's training. When someone grows up around unpredictability, emotional instability, criticism, neglect, or constant tension, the brain adapts. It becomes hyper-aware. It learns to predict emotional weather before the storm hits. This creates something powerful and painful. You become emotionally intelligent, highly observant, and unusually aware of human behavior. But underneath it all, that intelligence was built for protection, not peace. You learn people before you learn yourself. You master survival before comfort. And sometimes, the world praises the very coping mechanisms that quietly drain you. That's traumatic intelligence. And the strange part? Many people who have it don't even realize they do. So let's talk about the signs. Because once you see them, you can't unsee them. 1. You read people. Extremely fast. You can meet someone for 5 minutes and already feel like you understand them. Not because you're judging them, but because your brain has been trained to scan for emotional danger. People with traumatic intelligence often become experts in micro-expressions, tone shifts, body language, and unspoken tension. As children or during painful life experiences, they learned that safety depended on noticing subtle emotional changes before they became major problems. For example, maybe you grew up knowing exactly when a parent was in a bad mood before they said a word. You learned the sound of footsteps, the silence before anger, the difference between a real smile and a forced one. Now, as an adult, you do the same thing with everyone. You can tell when someone is lying. You notice fake kindness. You sense hidden resentment. People call you observant. But sometimes you're just tired. Because constantly reading people means you rarely get to relax around them. You're not always overthinking. Sometimes you're remembering that missing the signs once had consequences, and that changes how you trust forever. 2. You apologize. Even when you did nothing wrong, you say sorry too quickly. Sorry for asking. Sorry for needing help. Sorry for having emotions. Sorry for existing too loudly. This often comes from environments where your needs were treated like burdens. When someone grows up being blamed, dismissed, or emotionally punished, they start believing peace must be purchased through self-erasure. So apologizing becomes protection. It becomes a way to avoid conflict before conflict even starts. Imagine someone canceling plans on you and somehow you're the one saying sorry. Not because you caused it, but because your nervous system learned that taking responsibility feels safer than risking rejection. This creates adults who are incredibly considerate, but often deeply disconnected from their own boundaries. They become easy to love when they are useful, but hard to love when they are honest. Here is something most people don't realize. Constant apologizing is not always kindness. Sometimes it's fear wearing good manners. And healing begins the moment you realize you were never supposed to apologize for being human. 3. You overthink small interactions for hours. A short conversation can live in your mind for days. Did I say too much? Did they seem annoyed? Did I sound stupid? Did I upset them? This isn't simple insecurity. It's emotional pattern recognition mixed with survival memory. When love, approval, or safety once depended on getting things right, your brain becomes obsessed with emotional precision. You replay conversations because mistakes once had emotional consequences. Maybe silence meant punishment. Maybe one wrong tone created days of tension. Maybe being misunderstood meant losing connection. So now, your mind tries to prevent pain by analyzing everything. A simple text message becomes a psychological investigation. A delayed reply feels like danger. You don't just communicate, you monitor. And the exhausting part is this. Most people have no idea how much mental work goes into every normal interaction for you. But the truth is even deeper. Overthinking is often the mind trying to create control where it once had none. It's not weakness, it's a nervous system that never fully learned safety. 4. You are calm in chaos, but anxious in peace. When everything is falling apart, you become strangely calm, but when life is peaceful, you feel restless. This confuses many people. They think peace should feel relaxing. But for someone shaped by emotional chaos, peace can feel unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel unsafe. Your nervous system learned chaos as normal. Stress became home. So when life becomes quiet, your brain starts searching for hidden problems. You wonder what's wrong. You wait for the bad news. You feel suspicious of happiness. For example, someone may enter a healthy relationship and suddenly feel anxious, not because the relationship is bad, but because stability feels emotionally unnatural. Chaos feels predictable. Peace feels uncertain. This is where things get interesting. Sometimes people don't sabotage good things because they want pain. They sabotage peace because peace feels like something they were never trained to trust. And that realization can change everything because healing often feels uncomfortable before it feels safe. 5. You struggle to accept genuine kindness. When someone is truly kind to you, part of you gets uncomfortable. You question their motives, you wait for the catch, you wonder what they want. Because if love once came with conditions, kindness feels suspicious. People with traumatic intelligence often learned that affection was transactional. Praise came with pressure. Help came with guilt. Love came with emotional debt. So now, genuine care feels unfamiliar. Imagine someone giving you support with no hidden expectation. And instead of feeling grateful, you feel anxious. That reaction says a lot. It means your brain learned to associate closeness with cost. You trust consistency less than you trust disappointment, and that creates a painful contradiction. You deeply want love, but when it arrives, your nervous system treats it like a threat. That's not because you're broken. It's because your definition of safety was shaped by people who made love confusing. And sometimes the hardest part of healing is learning that not everyone who cares about you is preparing to hurt you. 6. You become the therapist in every relationship. People tell you everything. Strangers open up to you. Friends rely on your emotional support. You always seem to become the strong one. This happens because traumatic intelligence creates emotional sensitivity. You know how pain sounds, even when people hide it. You listen deeply because you know what it feels like to wish someone had listened to you. So you become emotionally available, reliable, wise, safe. But often, there's a hidden cost. You become so skilled at holding others that no one notices how heavy your own mind is. You know how to comfort everyone except yourself. And sometimes, people love your healing energy without ever asking what it took to build it. That's the lonely part. Being emotionally intelligent can make you surrounded by people and still feel unseen, because strength is often mistaken for invulnerability. But the truth is simple. Just because you carry people well doesn't mean you were never meant to be carried too. And sometimes the strongest people are the ones quietly hoping someone finally asks, Are you okay? 7. You have trouble resting without guilt. Doing nothing makes you uncomfortable. Rest feels lazy. Stillness feels irresponsible. Peace feels like procrastination. This often comes from growing up where worth was tied to performance, usefulness, or emotional labor. Maybe you were praised only when you achieved. Maybe love felt earned, not given. Maybe survival required constant alertness and productivity. So now, slowing down feels dangerous. Even on your day off, your mind whispers, you should be doing more. People with traumatic intelligence often become high functioning because their nervous system confuses productivity with safety. Achievement becomes emotional armor. If I do enough, maybe I'll be enough. But exhaustion eventually tells the truth because rest is not a reward for suffering. It is a basic human need, and many people spend years trying to earn something they were always allowed to have. Here is something most people never admit. Sometimes ambition is not passion. Sometimes it is panic with good branding. And recognizing that can be the beginning of freedom. 8. You feel responsible for other people's emotions. Someone is upset, and somehow you feel like it must be your fault. Even when they say nothing, even when it has nothing to do with you. You carry emotional responsibility that was never yours. This usually begins in childhood. If you had to manage a parent's moods, prevent conflict, or keep emotional peace in the home, your brain learned that your safety depended on everyone else being okay. So now you monitor people emotionally. You become the fixer, the peacekeeper, the emotional translator. You notice tension and rush to solve it. Not because you want control, but because your nervous system equates harmony with survival. This creates adults who are incredibly compassionate, but often emotionally exhausted because you cannot heal people by abandoning yourself. And yet many people spend years doing exactly that. The deepest truth? You were taught responsibility before you were taught boundaries. That is why saying that's not mine to carry can feel almost rebellious. But sometimes, rebellion is exactly what healing looks like. Traumatic intelligence is powerful because it makes you capable. You survive, you adapt, you understand people deeply. But here is the hidden danger. You start confusing survival skills with personality. You think, this is just who I am. No, some of it is who you are, but some of it is who you had to become. Hyper-awareness is not always wisdom. Self-sacrifice is not always love. Emotional independence is not always strength. Sometimes these are scars that learned how to speak beautifully. Human beings are remarkable. We can turn pain into perception, loneliness into empathy, chaos into competence. But healing begins when we stop glorifying the wound and start asking whether we still need it. Because intelligence built from pain deserves compassion, not permanent residence. You were built to live, not just survive. Take a moment and ask yourself this. How much of your personality is actually protection? How much of your maturity came from having to grow too fast? How much of your independence came from learning no one was coming? How much of your kindness came from fear of being difficult? That question hurts because sometimes the traits people admire most in you were born in places you wish you could forget. People praise your strength, but they never saw the child who had no choice. They admire your calm, but they never saw the panic that taught it to you. They call you wise. But wisdom arrived wearing survival clothes. And maybe, just maybe, you deserve more than being admired for how well you endured pain. Maybe you deserve softness. Maybe you deserve peace that doesn't have to be earned. Maybe the next chapter of your life is not about becoming stronger. Maybe it's about finally feeling safe enough to be gentle. Traumatic intelligence is not a life sentence. It is proof that your mind learned how to survive. And survival is extraordinary, but survival is only the beginning. The goal is not to stay hyper-aware forever. The goal is not to keep proving your worth through exhaustion. The goal is not to become better at carrying pain. The goal is peace, real peace, the kind where love doesn't feel dangerous, where rest doesn't feel guilty, where boundaries don't feel selfish, where you no longer confuse anxiety for intuition. Healing is not becoming someone new. It is remembering who you were before fear became your teacher. So if you saw yourself in these signs, don't judge yourself. Understand yourself. Because awareness is where change begins. And maybe the most intelligent thing you will ever do is stop surviving long enough to finally start living. If this video spoke to something inside you, remember this. You are not too much. You are carrying too much. And there is a difference.